timely as well, even though it wasn't intended to be that when John wrote it. I thought very timely, like now and then, like, so he wrote it then, but it's for now and stuff. What was your feeling when you first heard it?
Well, hearing with the documentary they made that they released yesterday, and hearing how they isolated John's vocals, because I'd heard the song on YouTube, but they isolated his vocals using AI.
Yeah.
So it made it really clear. And I mean, yeah, I had chills, and it's just, he had that voice. It's weird. His dad had
absolutely. Yeah. Sorry, keep interrupting you. Very impolite of me.
Oh, it's all right.
Yeah. It's Eleanor's voice isolated. Was eerie. It sort of gave me chills, and then. But it's almost sounds silly to say this, but when John, Paul, George, and Ringo play together, they sound like the Beatles. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like, you put them all together, and it's that sort of that strange X factor that only they've got, which can't be replicated very well. Otherwise, people would do it. Can you understand what I'm saying, Amy?
I do. I get what you're saying, because it's purely off that documentary where they sort of built up, like they added this and they added that, and then Paul said, "Oh, and we added strings," and then it's like, "Oh my God, strings like Eleanor Rigby." Like the Revolver era where they added. To me, that's what I felt like it was, that era of that mid.
Yeah. I know what you mean. It seems more mid-60s Beatles than Double Fantasy John, I would say. But I mean, you probably know by now, it's a love letter to Paul. The song was a love letter to Paul. People have said that was Yoko or whatever, but it was John's way of saying, I know it's true. It was all because of you. It was like the ultimate olive branch in the form of a song, I would say.
Right. I agree with you. And there was a lot of, thing about, I'll go into like the intuitive thing with John that I've gotten from him, was that he felt like he and Paul were brothers, and they worked together in a way that was almost divinely guided. They were brought together in this magical way. And so the relationship they had and the magic that they accrued was almost, it was like magic. It was divinely brought, like kismet.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think every time he would think of Paul, of course he would remember all the memories and the bad things, because, they could argue a lot, and just like brothers do. And so,
it's obvious that they lived in each other's heads for a long time after the breakup of the Beatles. It was obviously that they went too far from one another's thoughts, I think, and creatively they spurred each other on, like as has been said in the past. It was like artistically, the best thing for John was jealousy, basically, because it made him up his game. So if Bob Dylan produced like a Grammy-winning album, that would give him the incentive to. And of course, you don't need me to tell you the same. You know all this yourself. But
that
was it.
Right. No, I agree, because I've had that. No, don't worry. It's the time difference and everything. But what's interesting is I've had that as a musician, where you're actively writing or not writing, and you hear someone, let's say, go on a talk show and they play a song, and you're like, oh my God, I was going to write that song. And so I think that also, it was a lot of that, but also, it would spur John on. And that's how a lot of artists work. They ping off each other, off their ideas. And there is a lot of jealousy. I'm sure Paul's done it too. I mean, I'm just sure of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's a good point. It's like, I can remember a quote by John. Actually, it was Fred Seaman, his personal assistant. He said like a cookbook got to like the #1 bestseller in New York, and John got really upset about it. And Fred Seaman said, but you're not, you've never wrote a cookbook. And he said that's not the point. He just, that creative spur, he needed that like kind of spark to it worked in this case. Oh, nice background. I don't know if you can see this. Can you see that picture in the background there?
Marilyn Monroe. Wow.
Yeah. Well, are you familiar with Guy Fawkes Night? Do you know what happens there?
Yes, I'm pretty sure. Don't they do like the bonfires and things like that?
Yeah. Well, yesterday there's a bonfire where we live. Well, it's getting built now, and that was on it. That picture of Marilyn Monroe was
Nice.
was just thrown there. So I rescued it. You know, I couldn't have her spontaneously combust on a bonfire. You know,
Yeah,
never,
throws
you
away
know.
a picture of Monroe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, why would you even want to throw that out? It's just, it's a nice picture. Anyway, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah, I messed up the time. It's weird how I, tried to organize everything. And so I did come on too early, but I knew that something was off. And it's just, I'm a little dyslexic. So just keeping up with the different times. And I'm on with Allie later, and her time is 2 hours difference. And it's weird. So it's all good.
It's good that we're finally talking after the monotonous just typing a lot, and that and stuff. It's good that brilliant to be able to talk to you at last.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder what people did before the internet. Just because people would maintain like relationships for like 40 years without ever meeting one another and stuff like that. And there's lots to be said for the power of prose or whatever, that kind of thing. Sorry, I'm just rambling on here. But yeah, okay, can I start asking you questions then? Like we're on a talk show.
Okay, go ahead. You're gonna ask me questions?
Okay. Right. Okay, so I'm trying to think. Oh yeah. So about John's death, you told me that previously, but I'd like to if you could just explain how you heard about it and stuff like that.
All right.
If that's not too
no, it's not too. No, we've talked about it. Well, you know how a lot of people say it felt like the earth stopped. I was a little girl, so I'm on the steps. It was like one of those split level houses, and I'm on the steps coming down, and my mother's in the living room just downstairs and watching TV, having her coffee in the morning. So it was the morning, so it must have been like the morning after. And it's before school, and she says, "Oh, that druggie John Lennon, that weirdo druggie John Lennon was shot and killed." And I just felt like gravity, something dropped, and just stood there. And the earth stops, and I just thought, why would somebody do that? Why would somebody do that? And I was mad at my mother for saying that he was just equating him to some weirdo druggie, because I'd always, as a child, I'd always seen the Beatles as this pure entity of joy.
Absolutely, yeah.
And John was weird, but he was creative. And to me, art and creativity and music is everything. That's like everything to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I know people influenced John, but he really was peerless in a sense, in that he was a trailblazer in what he was doing. And especially with the peace movement, for instance, I love that idea of there's a pound or a dollar sign on everything. So he was selling peace the way pharmaceutical companies sell, drugs and stuff like that. And I can remember seeing an interview with him, with the bedding with Yoko, and someone said, the interviewer said to him, "This is all just for attention, isn't it?" And he said, "I'm one of the most famous people in the world. I don't need any more attention. But if I must get attention, I want it with something that I believe in," which of course was the peace movement at the time and stuff. So he sort of he made it a commodity to sell it in that respect, didn't he? And whatnot, which I think is really good at the time. I mean, he could have gone, just the usual rock and roll way, but he was prepared to throw himself. Well, this is a bad turn of phrase, but he was prepared to throw himself in front of sort of gunfire to get his point across, which of course happened years down the line and stuff like that. I tell you, I don't know whether you know this story, or whether we've spoke about it before. The BBC, the World Service at the time, the radio end of that, it was obviously the dead John Lennon had been shot, and at that point he wasn't dead, and they tried to get a line going through to England so they could report it on the radio, and this is just strange. None of the wires would open. The only one that would open was Liverpool. So Liverpool heard about John Lennon's death before the rest of the country, which is more than a little strange. I think you'd agree, wouldn't you? You know, like I know it's a coincidence, but at the same time, it is it's like, you know, like everything's mapped out in that respect and whatnot. So would that be the first celebrity that you remember that, or do you remember like the first celebrity you remember dying? Would that be John? Or
I think Elvis was before. And
do you remember Elvis dying? No.
You know what I remember is that playing outside in somebody's front yard, and a truck drove by, and Elvis was on the radio, and Elvis was already, I think he was dead. And
right.
And I just remember thinking, oh, this is what America is. It's freedom and running around, and Elvis is on the radio. And I just like, well, this a kid thought, you know. I just remember that. But I do remember, I think I remember him, I don't know, but I definitely remember John dying the moment that was announced. And I remember when Reagan, see, this was right before or after President Reagan was almost killed. So that happened around.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So things like that.
I mean, I wondered how much John's assassination played a part in that in Hinckley. Was he influenced by the person who shot John, I wonder? Or I know that the popular theory, you know, that he was doing it to impress Jodie Foster, you know. I mean, there's other ways of doing it. If you're trying to get someone's attention, you know, I think trying to assassinate the president is probably a bit too extreme. I would have thought.
Well, I have a theory, and I'll tell you my quick theory that I think John wanted me to talk about, because after I had this thought, it was like for days these movies would come on TV that had a similar plot line, and I'm like, okay, I think John wants me to talk about this. So here's the thing. He was followed, and really he was stalked by the CIA for the last certain number of years of his life. So his phone was bugged. He knew his phone was bugged, and John was very intuitive. So he knew his phone was bugged. He knew he was being followed. So he kind of was, I've used the term, a sitting duck. Now, I believe, and it's that time of year where JFK was shot, I believe that we have a thing called, you know, candidates, where certain people who are under psychotic drugs, you know, can be put into the service, because when you're put into the army, your brain becomes part of the army brain. You're no longer you're part of, like, die.
You're a machine, aren't you? You're part of the machinery that is the army.
My brother went into boot camp. He went into the service, never had to go to war, but he said that the whole thing about boot camp was to train you to die for the army, like to be ready to die for the army. So you give up that
instinct.
Your instinct to live and to have an identity. So think about somebody who's been on drugs and they have depression, and then they start to get manipulated. And I really feel like both of these guys, but I'll talk about the guy, and I don't like to say his name, the guy who killed John, was a candidate. He did it, but we can be very influenced. And okay, so here's the story going back. So John's very vocal, right? You know, makes this Jesus comment, and he's very liberal, very socialistic, very anti-war. And
absolutely.
He meets Elvis, who is his god, and everybody, and I love Elvis too, and we all love Elvis. But the problem was Elvis was all right, guns. He was part of that.
And
Elvis did not like John's snarky socialistic attitude when they met. And he went straight to LBJ and said, hey, there's this guy. And he's a Beatle, and he has all this influence, and you better keep an eye on him. And that sort of sealed the fate of John. I really feel like that had a huge effect on John's death, right? That moment right there. He got ratted.
No, I agree, it set the ball rolling, is what you're saying. No, I agree. He was literally, once they couldn't silence him artistically, if that makes sense, they had to do it physically, and and that was the repercussions of it, and stuff. And but the CIA, that's a good point. The CIA followed him pretty much until
There's
You
whole.
know,
Have you seen those files where it's all blacked out? Where they
yeah,
released the Lennon files? It's like, wow, they blacked out a lot. There's like a lot they don't want us to know.
yeah. It's like I know it's like thousands of redacted pages that, which is very suspicious, isn't it? I mean, if it was just one page, that would raise suspicion. But like, there's volumes of stuff that's been sort of eradicated from the official history, hasn't it? And that and stuff. I can tell you, I don't want to keep going on about Liverpool. I'm not obsessed, but Liverpool. I think Liverpool took it very personally. Is murder, because that newspaper article I sent you a couple of days back. That was the buzz in Liverpool in December 1980 that he was going to come back to Liverpool and stuff. And the city at the time, Liverpool as a city, was it didn't bear any resemblance to the one that John had left. Margaret Thatcher's government had really depleted the city. She literally wanted to gut Liverpool from what it was, and so there was like the things that the city was known for, like the trade, the docks and stuff, the shipyards and stuff like that. That all went, and there was a feeling that John coming back would have been the tonic, if that makes any sense, for like what the city needed. It was something that the entire city was like geared for this happening and stuff, and he was going to be given a king's welcome when he returned and stuff. So for it to be snuffed out like that, just at the very last minute, it really did hurt. And I'm not saying it hurt Liverpool more than anywhere else, but there was that feeling that it was a slight on the city, and that. And sorry for rambling on there about that. I just thought it was worth bringing up. I mean, the other point to that is
people want to hear your perspective, because that's you're part of that whole.
Well, Boris Johnson, the ex-Prime Minister, I think I told you this, or maybe you know anyway. He gave a damning report of Liverpool, because Liverpool will never be a conservative city. It'll never vote for the Conservative Party. It's always a Labour sort of run city. And Boris Johnson basically gave an interview where he said he didn't like Liverpool at all as a city, and he would always wallowing in sort of like misery over things that have happened. And he said the Hillsborough disaster, Heysel, and he mentioned John's death. He said any other city that would have been forgotten, and which is actually a backhanded compliment if you think about it. It's like he wouldn't have been forgotten anywhere, but like Liverpool does mourning as well as it does celebrating, if that makes sense. Yeah. Like, and
influence perhaps. Yes, you guys have more ties with Ireland. You're right next to Ireland, really, like the.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I don't know.
Ireland's have you been to Ireland or?
No.
Yeah. Ireland was a beautiful place to go and visit. Places like Dublin and stuff. But it's like anywhere else. It's become sort of, it's priced itself out of the market. If you know what I mean. Like so, it's not as working class as it once was, and it's like kind of.
Travel.
Sorry, I'm not doing very well for the Irish tourist board there, but you know what I'm saying. But yeah, it is right next to there's basically just the gap isn't that big between us and stuff. Have you been to England, Amy? Or?
No, I've never. I want to, but I haven't yet. And I have family, like my family heritage is pretty much all British Isle. So if you look, I have French, but and I want to go to France, but my grandmother, my great grandmother, like a lot of immigrants, left Ireland, and she was was she Burke? I think she was Burke. Right. And went to America because at that time in Staten Island, New York, they were asking for housemaids, and so basically an indentured servant, you watch for the kids and take care, clean the house. So it's better than being in Ireland where you were starving and there's no money. So she went, and then she got impregnated by the owner, the man of the house. So
good Lord,
my grandmother was my great grandmother went across the Hudson River or whatever it was, and gave up my grandmother for adoption at the Catholic Church in New York. So she had to go to New York, and then my grandmother was sent out to the Midwest and adopted out. So my grandfather, he was a brown, and this and that like Irish. That's like so.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure I have a lot of like Irish, British in me. And then my dad was Bass, and that's a British name, but then he had the French. So yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah. That's very Merchant Ivory, your family's history. Or like Frank McCourt, Angela's Ashes. That kind of, it's like, I don't know, some people would say that's far-fetched, but you're like kind of testing it out. Things did like happen like that, didn't they? And whatnot. And stuff. Of course, you haven't been to Liverpool in this lifetime, have you? But we'll talk about that later on, or maybe not. Yeah. So what was I going to say? So that was basically, you hadn't been. I mean, you're saying you're a kid, so you hadn't been too aware of who John was before his murder, then, or was that like your introduction to him through that? Or?
Through, you mean sort of liking the Beatles and John's music and things like that?
Just on the level, was that the first time you became aware of them, or had you been aware of them before that?
And by the way, my dog is sitting right where I would sit. So that's the story of my life, is not being able to sit anywhere I want to.
Hello.
He's right here. So, okay. So go ahead. And
I'm just saying, yeah, we're doing it again. Sorry.
Go ahead. Go
ahead. Yeah, so, I mean, that would have been the first point that you became aware of him, and that.
Well,
so, when you developed when you got aware of your psychic abilities, Amy, and stuff, was there did any famous people come through then that you were aware of, or when you first became aware of your own gift?
I would say that I've always had some sort of intuition, and I've always seen things and heard things. And one time I remember I got shocked when I was a kid, and I haven't thought much about that, but I was reading a psychic, her book, and the first page I turned to was where she said, oh, as a child, I was shocked in my living room at my childhood home, and that opened up my gifts. And I'm like, oh my God, I remember the time when I was upstairs and my brother and sister weren't looking, and I was wearing like a fuzzy pajamas, with the little feet, And I put the hairpin. I was like, I'm going to pretend to drive a car. And I put a hairpin in the electric socket and knocked me out. And I woke up at night, that electric smell all over me. And I think that's something about it, opens up your chakras, and it does something to.
See, you're a superhero. That was the accident. That was the accident. That was the catalyst for you to get your powers, Amy. You were the original Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're laughing. Yeah. I think I told you, I've mentioned it to you before. I was actually able to visualize John's death before I knew who he was.
Wow.
I used to have these nightmares. It was a recurring nightmare with the same thing happening again and again. And it was clear, it was like crystal clear in my mind as to what happened. This was before, well, obviously I was like 4 or 5. So I hadn't read up the details on his murder at that point. But it was always the same kind of thing. It was a limousine pulling up to a curb, and then a woman getting out, and then John, and then like the sound of the gunshots would always sort of like wake me up, and it was. But that happened. I'd say, like on average, like once a month for about 2 years that I was getting this vision, and then. There's a place in Liverpool called the Yellow Submarine. It's in the tourist centre of Beatles Town by the cavern, and it was like a theme park, Yellow Submarine. And that was when I first was able to put the dots together. I saw John's image for the first time, and I realised he was the man that had been in my dreams and stuff. And that kind of started a lifelong fascination with him then, to find out what happened and stuff like that. I know it sounds kind of a bit far-fetched, but that's how it went. That was my introduction to him. That's why I asked yourself then, was your first introduction to him because of his death. I subsequently discovered his music after finding out who he was, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that just like well, let me tell you this. That's really interesting, by the way, that you saw that. I mean, I had dreams after I sort of woke up and realized that I'd known John in a different lifetime. then he would come to me in dreams, and he showed me his death scene and just different dreams that I've had that were really, you could tell they were psychic dreams. They weren't like your normal, you forget them, and when you wake up in the morning, these had some sort of significance, and they're significant to me. Plus, he told me when I was pregnant with my daughter, and I was only like a few weeks pregnant, and so yeah, that was a big one.
So it was destined, and he was aware of your destiny on that level, John. And so that sounds sarcastic, everything I'm saying. I don't mean to come across that way. They're like, obviously he was aware of sort of like certain fixed points in your destiny and stuff, and that's fascinating. And so that was like kind of the catalyst for, like, I mean, did other celebrities come through in your life and stuff like that? Not that you have to go through every one of them.
I would say probably the biggest one, and it's some people might find it silly, but I had let's say I would look at somebody's picture on a magazine in a grocery store, a market, whatever, and let's say like Obama, and I would see I would see their higher self, and I would think, why does it feel like I'm seeing their spirit, that they're still alive? And I've had 3 dreams where Obama has hugged me, but what it is I could see their higher self. I could see their inside themselves. But I would say the biggest one, it was when Peter Tork from the Monkees died a few years ago, and he came right to me, and that's because I must have that light, like we all do. Us intuitives have that light. And for that whole winter after he passed, he would talk to me. And then I finally and he would give me all these answers to stuff. And that's why when John, that was the summer when John started to appear like on the ground, his face was on the ground and printed and it was very clear. And I think if I hadn't had Peter Tork, I would always, I manifested this, or I'm just seeing things. But because I've been thinking of Peter all the time, and John was like, oh, no, you need to bring your attention back to what this thing, because I'm supposed to write about him and all that stuff. So yeah, I've had Peter, I've had Janis Joplin, I've had dreams of her, and I had where a kid ran across the park, and I experienced Janis's death in like a psychic way, and that happened to me. And then I was at the park walking my dog, and a girl ran across, and her grandparents yelled, Joplin! Nobody names their kid Joplin. It was so unfair.
Strange.
Touch my bracelet one time. I felt her touch my bracelet. So I've had things with like that, and George Washington and other figures, and Jesus, and just different.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating. And as we were talking about, you may be a member of royalty from time gone past and stuff. Well, I mean, that left me cold, because I had a connection to the same person. So when you told me that, it was kind of, well, for want of a better word, spooky. But it made perfect sense. As does your connection to Julia. I think there's a lot of sense there. Not that I'm going to sort of like, I mean, that's your story to tell. They don't need me to tell people.
I've told it before, so it's okay.
Yeah, no, I do believe that. But of course, I had the dream with John Lennon where he alluded to yourself, where he basically told me in no uncertain terms that if in any way, like I was messing you around in any way, that there would be repercussions. So I'm literally terrified that he might punch me or something, and he might just come through the spirit world, just his fist and hit me or something. But going back to you're saying then about you saw the magazines in the grocery stores and stuff. This is a bit of useless trivia, but I'll just tell you. Bill Bixby, my namesake, who played David Banner in The Incredible Hulk, he actually found out his cancer was terminal because the National Enquirer had printed it before his doctors had bothered to tell him, and he was he was in the grocery store at the time when he read this from Perry's article, and he phoned his specialist or whatever to see what was going on, and he said the specialist confirmed it. He said, I'm sorry about that, and I should have told. I mean, you think they go to the patient before going to the press,
Yeah,
you know,
that's
but
terrible. That's awful.
yeah. Sorry, I've really brought the mood down with that one, haven't I? My apologies.
But you know what? I'll
Yeah.
tell you what. I read the story. Maybe you've read it too, where John would read some of those National Enquirers, and they would put out stories, and everybody's like, "Oh, it's fake, it's fake," and he would, and there is a lot, of made up stuff, but he would say, "How did they know that?" Like, so there is something about that creative process where they write creatively, and they're actually intuiting things, but. In that case with Bill Bixby, that was a total abomination. Isn't there supposed to be the doctor where there's a clause where they're not allowed to announce? So that's horrible.
Well, doctor-patient confidentiality. You'd think, if there was ever a time to sort of display that, and prove it, it would be if you had a patient who was dying of a terminal illness. I think, going to the National Enquirer. I mean. The National Enquirer is like the Sun, I think. We have the Sun over here in England, and it's basically a muckraking kind of rag, and they seem to have the same objective, both of them, which is sensationalism and that kind of thing. Yeah. Sorry, I waffled on a bit there. So I was telling you the other night about my connection to Freddie Prinze.
Okay. Yeah.
That's a riddle disguised as a conundrum. Has this ever happened to you when, like, you feel as though someone is trying to get a message to you, but it's not coming through what it is exactly? It's like the channels are blocked. That's how it kind of feels. But with Freddie Prinze, there was a lot of, I don't know whether you know the story. Even though he shot himself in the head and he left a suicide note, 6 years later, his mother, his wife, and representatives of his son sued his GP for overprescribing Quaaludes to him, and they got a substantial payout from it, which is strange, even though he left a suicide note. But I think what he used to do, Freddie Prinze, was he used to like to frighten his friends. He'd say, "Right, this is it," and he'd pretend to shoot himself. And I don't know for sure, but I think he was playing and it went horribly wrong, and that because he'd done it time and time again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like he was depressed, but it was an accident. I really feel that.
Yeah.
And,
well, you see, some comedians, anyone performers, can work for years and years, like 20 years before getting a break, and then it happens for them. On the other hand, in Freddie Prinze's case, it can be spontaneous, it can be instant, instant. I mean, he was on the Johnny Carson show and his life changed overnight. And for the first, say, 12 months of that, everything went his way. But as soon as things start going wrong, the results can be disastrous. And he did start going wrong with him. He had a substantial drug addiction, and his estranged wife put like a restraining order on him and stuff like that. And his ex-manager was suing him for going with a new management company. And the other thing, he was only 22. You see him, he looks much older than he was. But he literally a baby. He probably didn't have, he hasn't grown up at that point, obviously. And it's just a shame that it came the way what happened. But obviously he felt like there was no alternative, presumably, and that that happened.
Well, you talked about that, and you said right when Matthew Perry died, and you can't help but notice that there's a connection there, because like in the death, there was a lot of that. And Matthew Perry was older, obviously, but there's a connection there. They're both TV shows. That
was my first, upon hearing of Matthew Perry's death. That was my first kind of it made a little bit of sense to me. I was picking up on something that was going to happen to a sitcom star, but it's like I say, it's talking to certain spirits and stuff. It's easy. With others, it's like kind of there is a riddle there that I think you've got to kind of unravel, if that makes sense.
No, it's hard. So, I get it all the time where I'm supposed to be listening more, and I'm just, You know how it is. You get busy in life, or you just, yeah, it's hard. So I really should be
Yeah.
sitting down and listening, and I don't. So I think it frustrates
Yeah.
them when you don't.
Well, despite being a superhero, you are human, Amy, and so it's like it's a journey to find to unravel it, as we say. I was going to ask you, Karen Carpenter, have you ever
Yes.
been aware of? Yeah.
Okay, so here's what's funny. I remember hearing her voice. My mother ran this little library in town. Like we had this little small town Western or Midwest. Like, have you ever seen the Andy Griffith Show?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
It's like that. It
Yeah.
was like smaller than that. And so she ran this little library in this little Western town, and she would have a radio on. And I remember they played Karen Carpenter one time, and I just stood there and I thought, that's the most beautiful voice I've ever heard in my life. I was a little girl.
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
And it's funny because my voice now, okay, so I've always been skinny, and my mother would say, "You're getting too skinny. You're going to be like Karen Carpenter." But she shouldn't have said that to me. She shouldn't have said that, because then I was like, "Oh, well, I love Karen Carpenter," and so I kind of have been one of those people who are like for attention with my mom. I've never been anorexic, but with my mom, it would be like if I ate. I don't know. I'm not going to get into all that, but there's a connection, and I have connected with Karen Carpenter before, and probably my voice sounds like hers when I sing. Okay.
Yeah.
And so one time, her voice was on the radio, the TV radio, and my son looked at me and he said, "Mom, that's you. You're on the radio." So
wow,
got really bright back there for some reason when I said that. But yeah, I love.
I noticed that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I asked about it is because when speaking to yourself, I get a strong connection to Karen Carpenter. That's why I asked you that question specifically. I don't know what that means, but it does. You know, we talk about soul seeds and things, and I think from my point of view, it does seem that you're very close to it in that respect. That's why I brought it up. But she's got a unique, like Freddie Mercury, and she had a unique voice in that no one else in the world sounded like it did. And it was beautiful, and as was she. And it's just a shame that she had those particular demons that she had. And I'm trying to think.
Well, no, go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, go on. I keep tripping over you, Amy. I apologise. It's not very gentlemanly of me.
That's okay.
Yeah, go on. I'll let you go on.
Well, I'll say this: in high school, when everybody else
sorry,
was
that was childish.
No, you're good. You're good. And so I listened to her on secretly on my earphone. So I'd be at the lunchroom, and everybody else was talking or whatever, and I'm secretly listening to Karen Carpenter or on the bus. And also we talked about Phantom of the Opera. I would listen to that too. But no, Karen Carpenter, for me, it's always been this secret thing where I always loved her voice. And okay, so I remember it was at some point, maybe it was late 90s or early 2000s, when people started to admit that they all liked her again. And it wasn't weird. And I was like, thank God, because then I was like, okay, I've always loved Karen Carpenter, and she had this really gothic sort of thing about it was sort of depressive, like depressive love music.
Yeah.
But I love that. Yeah.
Well, a song like Superstar, a delivery of that song in particular, you can tell not only that this woman have an unlimited supply of kind of talent, but she was also in trouble, if that makes any sense. Pain feels very raw on songs like that, and I don't know, maybe it was a good outlet for her to be able to to vent in that way and stuff. But but that's I wanted to save that till I'm speaking to you now, because since we've been talking, I have that is the feeling I've got, that there is a connection between you and Karen Carpenter, and it's a strong one. So I just thought that let you know that, Amy.
Well, let me tell you, you probably know this, maybe you don't, but and I read this and I was like, It was. I heard that John heard her. I don't know if he heard her demo at the recording studio or someone just played her for him. And
Yeah.
this what's weird is he said she has the most beautiful voice, and it was like the same thing that I heard in my head that time when the first time I heard her. So it's interesting that John, and you know what I think what it is that John, she reminded him of his mother, and so I think there's
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can kind of see it. Yeah, the variation on the story that I heard was that I think they were recording in Capitol Records building, and John walked past her, and then he tapped her on the back and said, I just want to tell you, you've got a beautiful voice, love." And because of her personality, the way she was, she she was asking people, was he making fun of me and stuff. She didn't like it. It became a problem. Well, obviously she had some demons and stuff, but like kind of John wasn't one to stand on ceremony, was he? He like if he felt he had to say it, he would, and that. But of course, because she was manic depressive, like she saw the negative side of it, and that. And sorry, oh God, but I'm just rabbiting on here, Amy. My apologies. I was going to say, people like that, like, isn't it strange? Don't you think? Like, normally the most important member of the group is the one that dies.
Yeah, that's
it's like they've given away so much. Like, how can I say? Like, they've given away so much of energy and talent and stuff that literally it's like they've spent up kind of whatever they were given. If you know, like kind of history has a way of kind of dealing with that kind of thing. Sorry, I'm just rabbiting on here. I honestly, I haven't smoked marijuana today, honestly, Amy. It's just go off on these tangents and whatnot.
Let me say this: that what I got was that they're the leader and they lead the band there, and then they lead people to the band into this whole movement, and then their job is done. And I thought of Jim Morrison and people like Jim Morrison and Janis Joplin, and how they kind of had a similar thing where they would lead the movement and then they're done and they go on. And that is like a very spiritual thing to do that.
Yeah. Well, it's a good point. I mean, Freddie Mercury hated being called the leader of Queen. He was very diplomatic in that, like, he saw it as 4 equal people that made up Queen. Yeah. And like, I think one of his strengths was being able to step back and let other people have at the time in sort of the limelight and whatnot. I mean, he's famous for his lack of interviews as well, because he would often be misquoted. So he would speak to a journalist and they'd pick the bones out of what he said, and then they'd print whatever lies he wanted to print. And I think he twigged onto that like very early in his career and his stardom, and then for the rest of his life, like the press were his enemy. I mean, at the end there, I mean, I don't know how you received it in America at the time, but the last, say, 2 or 3 weeks of Freddie's life in Britain was a disgusting, horrible period. It was like there was literally like 500 journalists outside his house, and climbing over the fences and putting a camera up to the windows and stuff to get like the last photograph of him and stuff. And he was a prisoner in his own house. I mean, he was ill; he couldn't get out anyway. But it was kind of. But what I liked about, I mean, what I think was quite cute and clever was when he did announce that he had AIDS and he was dying, Freddie. He announced it to the world media rather than the British press, because the British press, if he'd have told them, they would have had a scoop to themselves and then they could have sold it on. But he ensured it was like released. The statement was released worldwide and stuff. So it was like kind of. He won the sort of the chess game in that respect. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, he had to take control, which he did a good thing there. Well, the American press was for all the bad stuff they do. I think that we obviously are better about the paparazzi than the British press. That's just really sad.
The British press is disgusting, and it's it is a horrible kind of. It's a rat race essentially, and a lot of the times they don't. the British press don't care about whose lives they ruined as long as they sell newspapers, which is,
yeah.
I mean, I just can't abide with that. I can't abide how you go into that career where it's worth ruining someone's life, you know, for a few extra £1,000 or dollars. I just can't understand. I mean, that's just me. I could never go into that thing knowing that's how you got to live your life. No, you've got to ruin other people's lives. But with Freddie, he was like, I think it was photographs of him became. He was like the prize, like a fox hunt. He became like the sort of the prize kind of, you know, the winning sort of token, if you like. And so he was followed and stalked by journalists and press to get the last photograph of him. And then it was always the same thing as well. It was because he hadn't admitted that he had AIDS. It was always, the press was kind of scornful towards him. So, like worries for sick Freddie and stuff like that. They weren't worried about him. They were just worried about, you know, selling more newspapers and that. And, did you see Bohemian Rhapsody with Rami Malek?
Yeah, and you know what? It took me a while to watch that movie. I remember when it came out a few years ago, and
without sound.
Yeah, that's.
You've gone quiet, Amy. I can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me at all? Okay. Oh no.
Oof.
Can you hear me? You can't hear me?
Dog in the background there.
Yeah, there's Kieran.
Yeah.
He wants the kitty cat. You want the kitty? Go ahead. He's going to chase the cat around. Can you hear me now?
Okay, you've gone quiet. I can't hear you, Amy. I don't know. I've developed deafness or something. But
One, two.
Has the sound come off your end?
I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you. You're good. Pets.
Yeah. Got no sound at all. We could just do it like mine or something like that. Let's do charades for the rest of the year.
Well, let me do this. Let me leave and come back. You stay here, and I'll come back.
I can hear you now. Yeah, there you go.
You can hear me now? Okay. You can still hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay.
I can hear you now. Yeah.
All right. So
that was strange, wasn't it?
Yeah, maybe John's messing with because you notice how I said I was going to leave. I was saying I'll leave and come back, and then it was like magically worked all of a sudden. So
yeah.
Let me say this. I have to leave by 1:10 because I have that interview, a job interview at the movie theater. So let's listen to the song soon. But let me tell you I'll tell you really quick about Bohemian Rhapsody because you asked me. I waited to watch that movie because I remember it came out and it was in the movie theater. I wanted to see it, but I couldn't because I was so worried about how they would portray his death. And honestly, they didn't. They showed his life and how heroic he was with, you know, announcing that he had AIDS, which probably saved a lot of other people, and it took the stigma away and everything else. And that was really brave of, and it showed Live Aid, which is, you know, a beautiful thing that he did. And I feel John was part of that on the other side. But so I couldn't see the movie. I was so afraid of watching that movie. And then it was out on download on whatever. So I finally did watch it. And I watched it like 100 times. And I just love that movie. And Rami Malek, I feel like, even though he didn't completely look like him, he channeled him. And there's something about how they all were the perfect casting. And it was a real, like the way he would have to smile and everything. It was just so beautiful to me to see that. I love the movie. It was great.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it does look like Freddie Mercury. Like he was literally a one-off, wasn't it? I was glad that there was a lot of demand for Sacha Baron Cohen to play Freddie in it. The trouble is with the moustache, he just looks like Borat.
That's right.
So it would have been Borat as sort of front and center, and you would have had to get around that obstacle. Whereas someone like Rami Malek, who wasn't as well known, it was easy to accept him straight away as Freddie, I thought, and it was very much a sanitized kind of, those like sort of MGM musicals from the 40s and the 50s, and kind of, I thought it had more in common with that than say, I don't know, Raging Bull or something, that gritty kind of, like biopic that tells it as it was. And but it was a good point where you said, you just said then about you're apprehensive about how they were going to portray his death and stuff like that. It's like, that's a good point. It's kind of, they could make that film about, his suffering and show what he went through. But I'm glad they went the other way, which was to celebrate his life, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Kind of, and it was entertaining in the same way that that he was. And sorry, do you need to play the record now, or?
Yeah, let's do that. But it's good that we brought up Freddie, because I feel like Freddie, John, David Bowie, they all had a bond and still do, and they definitely are connected in some way. And I feel like probably in some intergalactic thing that they're connected. So let me say this real quick, because this is my painting I made of John. It's not.
That is amazing. Yeah, no, it's brilliant. Do you know, Amy? I went to art school myself, and I did art at university and that, and I really liked his hands, the way you do his hands. It was. I know that sounds like something very random to pick on, but that's amazing. And I think there's probably something in what he's doing with his hands and that painting that'll make sense to you further down the line, I think. Yeah. Did I tell you? I think I've told you, haven't I, that I did all 4 Beatles voices for the Liverpool Tourism Board.
Nice.
Have I told you that before?
I think you told me you did their voices. Yeah. Nice.
Well, John, would you like a demonstration?
Sure. Let's hear it.
Okay, so I'll start. George was kind of he was because he was persecuted when the Beatles first sort of like hit big. He was always like very conscious of his voice, and he'd gone through a lot of elocution lessons. So there was still a Scouse accent, but it was kind of very kind of clipped and measured, and every word that he was. I went to Rishikesh and with the Maharaj. That was how I could do better than that, but that was just a little example. Ringo has become strangely mid-Atlantic. They asked me if I wanted to be in the band. So I said, yeah, I'll join the band on Monday. That kind of thing. Yeah. Paul is kind of, I'll take the glasses off for Paul. Paul is kind of sort of, that kind of thing. People asked me at the time, if I was in the Beatles, and I don't think I was, but that's just an example.
Yeah.
Whereas John spoke like this, kind of everything was very nasally, and and if you think I'm mad for going up with her, then fuck you. That kind of thing, How's that sound as a demonstration, Amy?
That's good. You know what? You should have done the Yellow Submarine voices, because I always felt like they had the voices backwards in that movie. Like I felt like Ringo sounded like John, and they kind of mixed it up. So
I've got a hole in my pocket. No, that kind of. What's weird is that is when they make biopics about the Beatles, but the actors are from Liverpool. It's like, whereabouts is Ringo going to play? And it's a weird kind of mishmash of things. And there was a time when I think after doing that, I couldn't stop talking in John's voice. It was probably I was talking to everyone, sort of, like, have you got a problem or something? Like, maybe if you just did it this way, it'll kind of, that's just an example, Amy, of that. And that was actually me on Now and Then. It wasn't John. It was my isolated voice. Yeah. Sorry, do you need to play the song now before you go?
All right. Well, I have to get ready though, because this is going to be. I think this is part of why I've been feeling off today, because hearing the song is going to be emotional. So
can I just say one thing? Mm-hmm. That's not a wig. It looks like one. It looks like I've got one of those. I look like. Yeah, my red hair is kind of darker on the camera. I've noticed there. Sorry, Amy. Carry on. I'm waffling on.
Okay, well let's do this. So this is.
I'm gonna put my shades on just in case I get too emotional. Okay.
All right. So here we go. And hopefully we won't get a copyright strike here, but
that's it. Yeah.
Whatever. You got to go for it, or you don't. So.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I know. Shit. Okay, so earphones. Come on.
Language. Sorry.
I'm Irish.
How dare you swear?
You know, it's funny, like when my kids got to be of a certain age and I would hear them cuss. And you know how a lot of parents would be like, there's no cussing in the house. And I'm like, yeah, we're Irish. So it's like, I kind of was like, now I can cuss. I can cuss again because, you know, it's like an Irish person in your head. You're like, bleep, bleep, bleep. I cuss like a sailor in my head. So not so much out loud. I hold it in. But
my father died in prison for something. He didn't die. Sorry, that was an impression of Daniel Day-Lewis there.
Yeah. Oh, I saw that movie. That's all right.
In the Name of the Father. Yeah.
Yes, he was a good Lincoln. Have you seen him in Lincoln? He was really good.
I haven't, no, but yeah, he's amazing. He's fantastic. You know, I think my favorite. I mean, this was my favorite actor currently. I think he's the best actor in the world. Is Sean Penn. I think he's. Have you seen Milk? Sean Penn and Milk, where he plays Harvey Milk.
No, I need to watch that. I need to watch it, but I'll never forget. Go ahead, music.
Oh no, go on, kind of.
And Fast Times at Ridgemont High, when he orders that pizza, and the look on his face when the teacher, just I love that. I think we all knew that in high school. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Spicoli, his name wasn't it? Yeah, in that film. Yeah, yeah. He's just. Yeah, that's it. I like when he falls backwards out of the caravan that they're in, and that. Oh yeah, that was just a brilliant film. Fast Times at Ridgemont High, wasn't it?
That's a great
sorry, I'm postponing this.
All right, well, let's do this. Take a deep breath. We got to do this. And like I said, no copyright strikes. This is all. We don't own the rights to this song. We're just honoring a new Beatles song. So here we go. The first time I've heard it.
Okay.
I need a lighter.
Just flash the V signs.
Look at my glasses. There's that Karen Carpenter sound right there.
Yeah.
You think that's Paul?
Yes, the harmony's coming in there.
I think they put little Paul in the vocals.
Oh man.
Yeah, I hear Paul.
Yeah. How beautiful is that? Yeah.
Yeah.
This bit gets me now. This, yeah.
It's
this bit.
The strings. I can hear the strings in there. And George. So they took this track from George's old track in the 90s.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. I think Paul was actually playing with George's instruments as well to fill the gaps. Yeah, so he's represented in that sense. It's just, sorry to interrupt, David, but just that very idea that, like, you know, other people sort of invest so much in what they're saying and things, and they overcomplicate things and stuff. And John was able to just break your heart just by saying now and then, "I miss you,"
Yeah.
and
True.
it's really cutting to the point. And well, I think we speak for everyone. We all miss John, and
Yeah.
there isn't a year that goes by where his relevance is needed. So so much in that, and of course you've got like a sort of a front row seat with him. So you're kind of you're privileged in that sense that he's connected with you for some reason and stuff. So I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So your opinion on the song then, from what you've heard?
I think that it's it's beautiful hearing his voice, and
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to say, like, from a musician brain, did they overproduce a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to judge, because that's just, my brain's not working right now. Like, it's a little emotional, so I'm not connecting the two. I just think that it's beautiful that they got John's voice out there. If nothing else, and that they work together. So let's say the rest of us don't matter, our opinions don't matter. It's that they work together again, which is kind of a beautiful thing. The Camelot came back again another time,
Yeah.
and that's a beautiful thing for all of us. So
absolutely, yeah, and I think it would tickle John no end to think that 43 years after his death, he's still the most important musician in the world. Culturally, philosophically, whatever superlative you want to kind of add to that, he's still, even though he isn't here, he is here, and he's still number one or number 9 maybe.
Yeah, number 9. There you go. I know, because right now you can't beat Taylor Swift. I have a respect. I don't like her music, but I have a lot of respect for her. And Beyonce, I have a lot of respect for her. I don't like their music, but that's just my personal choice. But I have a lot of respect for them. They're like the big ones right now, right? Like John would have to compete with women, which is, hey, that's okay. I mean, he'd be like, fine, that's
Brilliant.
yeah. So yeah.
I met Taylor Swift. Have I told you the story?
You met her?
Taylor. Oh God. I'm just, my blood pressure's gone up just thinking about this. But I did that. I was doing security at the Liverpool Echo Arena where she performed.
Yeah.
And she came down the corner with her friends and that and stuff. And I was just shocked to see it. I wasn't expecting to sort of get that close to her. Yeah. And I basically tripped over my own foot like an idiot. She walked away laughing to herself, thinking, "What a fucking idiot!" And and she was right as well. I can make a fool of myself in front of just about anyone. Anyway, this has been really good, Amy. I've enjoyed doing it.
Yeah, me too. And I would say she probably remembered you, because if you had just walked by, she would have seen you and experienced you, but she wouldn't have remembered you as much. But now she'll always remember the guy that tripped in front of her and
tripped over. Yeah, I was literally on all fours. It was. She must have thought, "What's he doing?"
Maybe John I bet John tripped you.
It probably was John. Yeah, it was. How'd you like that, eh? Rough like that. Yeah. It's been brilliant, Amy. We must do this again. We could do it again, I suppose. We could do like. Well, I'd still like to do the horror movie discussion with you at some point if you'd be up for that. That'd be. I think that'd be good. And maybe Sherlock Holmes. We could talk about that. And I know you're not that familiar with. That sounds really patronising. I didn't mean it that way. I know you're not familiar with them, but I didn't mean it that way. But yeah, it'd be good to talk to pick your brains on various different things. Like kind of as an artist yourself, and get your viewpoint on various different things. If you'd be up for that.
Yeah, let's do it. We'll do it. I have to work Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so let's plan it for next week, and then let's do it. Let's set it up.
Okay, and just before I go, the other message, clear message that I felt I got from John, where you were concerned, and I've told you this previously in an email, but the sort of the notion that I latched onto was he actually in so many ways said that you were the girl with kaleidoscope eyes. That's true. That was the message that that I got, and it was the way it was presented to me was, have you ever wondered who the girl with kaleidoscope eyes is? And when I said yeah, it was said, well, that's exactly who it is. So that's one for your kind of stepping stone for you, Amy, to on your voyage of self-discovery. That is like, you know, kaleidoscopic eyes that are like good. So I'm rambling on again, aren't I? My apologies.
No, you're fine. All right. Well, we'll talk later. I'll tell you what. I'll email you later, and we'll set up the show. So
Brilliant.
Thank you, Jamie. Okay. Nice talking to you, and I'm glad that I introduced everybody to you. And what I should do is send me a link for some of your YouTube videos, and I'll put that underneath the video. So when it'll post like hours from now, it'll post on my channel. So I'll put the links for your work in there. So.
Okay, I really appreciate that. And one final impression before we go.
Okay.
I'd just like to say on behalf of myself and the group, I hope we passed the audition. I can do better than that. Rattle your jewelry. Okay, farewell, Amy.
Peace.
I'm love. Yeah. So I'm lining up now. Right.